the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Potentially being what it could have been is that Darvin Ham's rotations and choices backfired. Lakers Twitter seems like they're not majority pro Darvin Ham from what I've gathered. Do you think the front office shares that sentiment and the players share that sentiment that this could be it for Darvin Ham? We're like over 50% or under 50% he's back next year?
I think it depends on how the season ends. If they lose, like if they finish as the 10 seed and lose in the 9-10 game, I think it's difficult to bring him back. I'm not saying he won't be brought back in that scenario, but I think it's hard to justify it going from being in the conference finals and winning. Because last year they went on a crazy run. I think they closed the season something like 22-7 or whatever. And like they were winning at a 50+ win pace. And to go off of that with this core and go on a conference finals run to losing in the 9-10 play-in game and not even making the playoffs, like that is such a disastrous fall off that I think it's hard to justify bringing him back. Now, I think the Lakers have also lacked stability at the coaching position in recent years. That, you know, in less than it was like a 6-7 year span, maybe 7-8. They went through Byron Scott, Luke Walton, Frank Vogel, Darvin Ham. So I think
Luke
like
Walton, man, that feels like forever ago.
Yeah,
he feels like he got lost in the
first year of LeBron, Luke Walton, and like so. I think for them, like there is they view Darvin as both a ready now coach and a coach who would grow and had some promise, and like so I think, I mean, you can look at like objectively his resume of winning, getting to the Western Conference Finals in year one and winning the in-season tournament in year two. And then potentially, let's just say like they make the playoffs and like win a round, like that's a pretty good resume for a coach in their first two seasons. So to me, it really depends on like, do they lose in the play-in? Do they lose in round one? Or do they lose in round one to a non-Denver team? Because I also think that's going to kind of color it, where like if they just play Denver in round one and get their asses kicked, like sure, I mean, most teams in the West are probably going to get their asses kicked by Denver, and Denver's probably going to roll to the finals. But if they play like Oklahoma City or Minnesota, teams that they theoretically have a shot against, and they lose in like 5 games, then it's a bit of a different conversation again of like, why were they not prepared enough or whatnot in the series? So I think the context here really matters. For that reason, I would probably go over 50% chance he is back. Because I think just looking at the potential scenarios with this team, that there's probably higher odds of a positive scenario marginally, at least like making the playoffs. Like I think that's still within the realm of possibility, but we'll see. Like I don't, because that's so. I guess to answer your question about front office or players, I think the front office and ownership have a lot more confidence in Darvin Ham than the players do in the locker room. I think the situation has gotten better as he has found better lineups and better rotations and kind of stabilized that. And so there's also just been a level of consistency, because that was kind of part of it too, is it wasn't just maybe not starting the right guys or closing the right guys, but in general, there were nights where player X would play 8 minutes, and then on the next night he would play 24 minutes, and like just vacillating night to night to such a dramatic degree that a lot of players complained about not being in rhythm and not knowing what their role was. So the fact that he finally settled on that a couple months ago, I think has been a positive. I think that the team chemistry has never been better than it currently is. But I think if you gave people truth serum, like they're still not like, they're still holding on to some of the stuff that happened earlier in the season, that they haven't forgotten about it. And again, if they end up falling short in the first or second play-in matchup, I think that's where people are going to point to as like, why weren't some of these lineups playing more earlier in the season? Why did it? I mean, they're finally going to start Jared Vanderbilt the game that he got injured, and he ended up starting that game because no LeBron and AD, but like he was about to become the full-time starter, and then he gets injured, and we'll see if he even comes back this season. So like they've had some bad luck with injuries, to be sure, but again, a lot of it has been self-inflicted wounds in terms of just not playing their best players for whatever reason. That's kind of been the other thing, is that there's not been a clear it's not like, this guy is like a bad guy or like a cancer in the locker room, or like he's late to practice or doesn't try hard. There's really been like none of those reasons given or explained publicly or privately. So it's just been a lot of head scratching in terms of like, why are lesser players playing above better players? So I think within the locker room that there's still some, I don't want to say concern, but like maybe skepticism. But within the front office, I think there's a lot more confidence in certain parts in terms of moving forward and continuing to grow and develop as a coach.
Interesting. Final thing here on the Lakers, and we'll talk some broader NBA here. Trae Young, he involves my team. He is back. I didn't think we'd see him again the rest of the way here, but he's back. Dejounte Murray's played really good basketball without Trae Young. I think it was Mark Stein this week who it comes out a report of like it's likely that the Hawks either trade Dejounte Murray or Trae Young. Both have been linked. You talked about Trae Young and the Lakers link. Dejounte Murray at the deadline was something that was like, oh, is he going to get moved? Is that a Laker at the deadline type deal? Does your gut just kind of in your reporting and what reading the tea leaves, does it feel like to you the Lakers and the Hawks end up being trade partners this summer, whether that's Dejounte or Trae? Does it feel like one or the other is likely Los Angeles bound?
So my default stance with these types of scenarios are they're always more likely than not to not happen, right? Mm-hmm. Just because, I mean, like Dame basically was telegraphing he wanted to go to Miami. And I know part of that was some bad blood in that situation for various reasons. But like, I mean, like if there was ever a superstar trade.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.